guys. Tonight we're taking a slow walk through the sand-dusted corridors of ancient Egypt where golden coffins shimmer. Incense drifts in the air. And pharaohs didn't just wear crowns. They carried some unbelievable obsessions. Right now, somewhere in the world, there's a tired mind scrolling for peace. Maybe it's you. And what better way to fall asleep than with a bedtime story about kings who believed they were gods and sometimes married their own sisters, just to keep the bloodline pure. Tonight, we're not just drifting off, we're quietly stepping through booby-trapped tombs, dodging palace intrigues, and peeling back layers of eternal illusion, each symbol carved in stone. Everything flows softly, slowly, gently until you realize a pharaoh's bedtime ritual sometimes included burying 300 servants alive with him. But don't worry, you just need to sleep. They had to keep serving in the afterlife. So before you relax, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe, but only if you truly feel what I'm doing here is worth it. I'd also love to know, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Drop a comment and say hi. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Oh, right now, you're sitting there, in the soft glow of dim light, your pillow neatly arranged, ready to drift into an era where the sun didn't just rise. It was deified every morning by a man who believed he was the sun. You imagine yourself stepping into a white limestone palace, gleaming under the blazing golden light of the Nile Valley. Towering walls are carved with falcons, zuns, and strange picture-like scripts known as hieroglyphs. Your footsteps echo across cool stone corridors, and in that moment, you realize this isn't just a palace. It's the grand stage of a living god, the pharaoh. Early in the morning, while you're still curled up under your blanket, the pharaoh has long been awake. But don't imagine a pleasant morning routine. No morning coffee, no TikTok, just a long line of servants, waiting to shave every hair off the king's body, head to toe, because, yes, having lice was seen as not very divine. Every movement is performed ritually, with the scent of resin and cinnamon oil wafting through the air. Some believe the fragrance warded off evil. Others probably just thought, maybe it helps with pharaoh stink after a long hot day. Next comes the makeup. Yep, you heard that right. The king would have his eyes lined with jet black kohl, not just for a mysterious look, but to block sunlight and repel bugs. The ancient Egyptians may not have had SPF 50+, but they were rocking eyeliner 3,000 years before you were. Once fragrant, smooth, and polished like a deity, the pharaoh starts the day by offering worship to other gods. Abitiroanit, isn't it? A king who claims divinity still bowing before stone statues of higher gods. Life does get a little brain-twisting sometimes. The rituals take place in massive temples, where light only slips in through thin stone slits like blades. Thick incense fills the air, mingling with chants of priests, creating an atmosphere not unlike a spa, if that spa had a couple of mummies in the next room. The pharaoh must follow the ritual precisely one misstep, and the goddess Mut, the embodiment of cosmic harmony, might get offended and leave. And you know, if the goddess of balance walks away, everything from floods to harvests can go south. Nobody wants to be blamed for upsetting the gods, especially when you're the son of the sun. A real historical event from the 14th century BCE. A king named Akhenaten tried to reinvent spirituality. He declared that worshipping a bunch of gods was unnecessary. One god was enough, Aten, the sun disk. He left the capital, Thebes, built a new desert city, banned worship of the old gods, and made everyone redo their art to look more modern. Statues of the king and queen and paintings of the royal family took on a weird, bendy style, slim bodies, slight potbellies, long faces, looking more human. Sounds progressive, but scholars still argue about it. Some say Akhenaten was the first religious reformer in human history. Others think he was just a quirky king with a talent for media control. Either way, after his death, his successor, a boy named Tutankhamun, had to reverse course, restoring the old religious system, and that led to the strangest discovery. Inside Tut's tomb, archaeologists found 2 mummified stillborn daughters, buried with him, because in Egypt, death didn't cancel fatherhood. And there you have it, a day in the life of a pharaoh, filled with ritual, politics, and responsibilities that followed you into the afterlife. Oh, and don't worry, not replying to your boss's email today probably won't trigger a national drought like forgetting to honor Ra might have. Still not sleepy? There's still so much more waiting for you. Power games between queens, assassinations in the harem, and even tales of pharaohs who believed that if their shadow fell the wrong way, it could disrupt the entire cosmic order. But we'll get to that after you've drifted off to sleep. And just when you thought a pharaoh, a living god, anointed with imported tree resin from Somalia, able to command tens of thousands of slaves with a single nod, surely spent every moment in divine, powerful, and untouchable majesty. Right? Well, not quite. Because no matter how deified, a human, even one claiming to be the son of the sun god, still couldn't escape one harsh truth. They also had to go to the bathroom. Yep, you heard that right. Right after the grand rituals, after granting decrees, hearing petitions, and enjoying sacred dances in temple halls, the pharaoh had to slip away to a discreet corner where power bowed to biology. But of course, like everything in royal Egypt, even that wasn't ordinary. First, imagine you're the pharaoh. You can't and absolutely must not go like a commoner. That would shatter the semi-divine image carefully built through stone statues, poetry, and political propaganda. So they created a ceremonial toilet seat, a small throne with a hole in the center, placed over an earthenware jar filled with sand or ash for absorption. No flushing water, of course, but don't worry. Egypt's 45-degree heat handled the smell decently well. And here's the part you'll love. After each event, the king didn't clean up himself. No, a fully trained team of silent, loyal attendants handled the royal poop. Not exactly a dream job, but certainly one no one dared to screw up. Rumor has it, some servants were assigned to monitor the pharaoh's waste daily, its moisture and color. Not to laugh at it, but to read divine signs about the king's health. Because if the pharaoh was ill, it meant the universe was imbalanced. A royal bout of diarrhea might be interpreted as a sacred omen for weak seasonal floods. See now? Even the thing we usually call private business was, for Egyptians, a mix of politics, medicine, and religion. Modern scholars still argue fiercely over this. Some believe royal bathrooms were part of secluded bathing chambers in the rear sanctum, often with hand basins and perfumed water. Others insist there's no conclusive proof and claim most pharaohs still used portable ceramic chamber pots, carried with them during festivals or desert hunts. Some artifacts found in royal tombs in Thebes include elaborately carved chamber pots with curved animal-like legs, painted sky blue to look more dignified. Yep, even the toilet had to be fashionable. And toilet paper? Nope. Egyptians used soft linen or bundles of dried reeds, sometimes dipped in salt water or scented oils. Pretty spa-like if you forget the real purpose. After use, everything was buried or burned, because touching divine waste outside of ritual could be considered sacrilege. Starting to feel sorry for the pharaoh yet? Because even living in gold, perfumed every morning, and seated on an ivory throne at the end of the day, he still had to choose the right kind of reed to avoid skin irritation. And we mere mortals at least get to sit alone without 3 people guarding the door, 2 scribes taking notes, and a priest whispering prayers outside. Here's joke number 3 for you. If you think your annual checkup is stressful, imagine a group of priests analyzing your digestive output every morning, then declaring, "Alas, it's too pale. The gods are displeased. Oh, hey, remember that drifting incense from earlier? Now picture yourself standing in an Egyptian royal bathhouse, where cleanliness wasn't just hygiene, it was a ritual to preserve divinity. If ordinary folks bathed to smell good, the pharaoh bathed to be worthy of facing the gods. Imagine this: no shower heads, no bubbly spa tubs. Instead, you have a massive earthen basin or a pristine white limestone pool, carefully laid by hand with stone slabs weighing tons. Water carried from the Nile or, for impatient pharaohs, boiled and poured in from embossed copper pitchers shaped like falcons or lotus flowers. The royal bath was never taken alone. There were always 2 or 3 attendants nearby, typically one to fetch water, another to mix oils, and of course, one to scrub the back. Because you're the pharaoh, you can't scrub yourself. That would be beneath your divine image. Soap bubbles? They didn't have any, but they did have a mixture of white clay, sea salt, honey, and fragrant oils, a natural exfoliant with gentle antibacterial properties. Sound like a modern spa's chemical peel? Well, the Egyptians were doing it over 3,000 years ago. You're just catching up, they defined the trend. Here's a fun fact most people don't know. Full body shaving wasn't just for beauty. It was a ritual requirement. The body of a pharaoh and of priests serving in temples had to be as smooth as a baby's skin, completely hairless. Egyptians believed hair was home to germs and evil spirits. If you've ever winced during a leg wax, imagine doing that every day, everywhere, and no lidocaine. After bathing, the pharaoh's body would be anointed with nourishing oils from precious rosemary and myrrh to imported resin from Syria or musk from Sudan. That's how they kept their skins soft in the dry desert wind. No anti-aging serums needed. Who needs retinol when you've got a team of slaves rubbing luxury oils into your skin every morning? And now for the part you've been waiting for. Makeup. Yes, not just the queen's pharaohs too wore eyeliner, powder, lip color, and sometimes blush. Eyeliner was iconic, a symbol of power applied so thick it resembled a classic cat eye. The black pigment came from galena, a type of lead ore toxic. But beauty first, while green came from malachite, a precious mineral. Egyptians believed beautifully lined eyes weren't just attractive, they repelled evil and protected against snake bites. They also loved face powder, not compact, but finely ground gypsum and crushed seashells. Rouge came from red iron oxide, and if you've ever complained about uneven lipstick, well, pharaohs used dye extracted from crushed red insects, a literal killer red lip. And one ongoing debate in archaeology: was royal makeup gendered? Some scholars argue only women wore cosmetics regularly. Others say every statue, mural, and mummy shows both royal men and women never leaving the palace without makeup. And if you think grooming is a vain indulgence, know that in Egypt, beauty was a sign of divinity. Soft skin, sharp eyes, and a lingering scent were how you showed the world. I am not merely human. The Pharaoh didn't just live like a god. He had to look like one. And you, lying there now, haven't even done your nighttime skincare? It's okay. At least you don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. to be fanned with incense and slathered in oils just to sip beer by the river. You're lying back, eyes half closed, imagining yourself as a pharaoh. Your body is anointed in oils, your eyeliner sharp as a blade, and now your stomach starts to gently growl in a very dignified way. Because you're royalty, you never get hungry, like commoners. So, what did pharaohs eat? Surprisingly, you might be eating exactly what they did minus the gold-plated dishes. They had wheat bread, lentils, dates, beer. And you've got instant noodles in bed. Don't worry if anyone judges. Just say, it's Anubis, flavored ramen, with ancient beef essence. The ancient Egyptians didn't eat meat every day, not even the pharaohs. Contrary to Hollywood visions of lavish feasts with giant turkey legs, their meals were much more clean and green. Bread was the soul of every meal, made from emmer wheat, baked on flat stones, sometimes mixed with onions, garlic, or cumin seeds. Imagine a warm, crusty loaf, fragrant and toasty, but possibly with a hint of sand blown in during kneading. Examinations of mummies have shown worn-down teeth from eating bread that often contained stone dust from grinding tools. Alongside the bread was a non-negotiable staple, beer. Yes, you heard right. Pharaohs drank beer daily. But don't celebrate just yet. Their beer wasn't craft brewed, it was thick, cloudy brown, made from fermented barley and bread, lightly alcoholic and full of sediment. It was somewhere between thin porridge and floating barley broth, but in a 45°C climate with no water filters. This beer was the purest hydration the god Ra could offer. Now the main course. If it was a festival day, or the pharaoh was in a good mood, say, after crushing a rebellion, the meal might include roasted goose, honey-glazed duck, herb-rubbed grilled beef with a sweet and sour sauce made of dates, raisin, and wine vinegar. Some texts even mention steamed ox heart with caraway seeds said to circulate the sacred air within the divine chest. Sounds sci-fi, soiree. But who's going to argue with Horus's head chef? Vegetables and fruit were a must. Cucumbers, Egyptian lettuce, like romaine, lentils, beets, garlic, and onions. Lots of onions. Egyptians believed onions had healing powers, warded off evil spirits, and could even prolong life. Try sipping onion broth and see if you feel immortal. Dessert was when the gods giggled. Honey, figs, dried dates, fresh grapes, toasted almonds. And if the pharaoh wanted to lift the vibe, he might order sesame sweets topped with pomegranate syrup, paired with wine aged in lacquered gold leaf jars. Here's something not many people know. Pharaohs didn't use knives and forks. They ate with their hands, but only after washing in rosewater and drying with pure white linen towels. Servants presented each dish on stone, ebony, or even jade plates, then waited in silence if the pharaoh frowned. That dish was permanently banned. Imagine being a chef and getting banished to the afterlife for oversalting a stew. Historians still debate whether pharaohs dined alone. Some argue royal meals were private rituals, but many archaeological findings suggest queens, princes, and princesses often shared the table, even raised cups together on special occasions. A sort of Saturday night Egyptian style, if you like. And of course, after the meal, the pharaoh was offered a special mouth rinse made from sea salt, mint, and perfume to keep his breath divine when speaking to the gods. See, being pharaoh wasn't easy. Even eating had to be sacred, ritualistic, and especially free of spinach in your teeth. Close your eyes now. Your body has been wiped with linen. Your hands still carry the warm scent of myrrh. And the last golden rays of the day are falling quietly on the white stone terrace. It's time for you, the bridge between humanity and divinity, to be entertained. But you don't laugh loudly or chill like we do now. Every form of entertainment wore a ceremonial mask, a political layer, or a spiritual purpose. Let's start with the basics. Music. Pharaohs didn't put on music. Music was offered to them. Dancers and musicians in the palace performed with harps, reed flutes, hand drums, and tambourines, an ancient form of the jingle drum. Music wasn't just for fun, it was meant to soothe the divine soul, exhausted from ruling this complicated world. But don't think the performance was gentle. Some ancient compositions were fast-paced and intense. Dancers would tumble, spin, and even use real blades in their routines. And if one slipped, well, no worries. The pharaoh never scolded, he simply said, "Let Anubis receive your soul." Aside from music, games were also a key part of royal relaxation. No more bailaps. But the pharaoh had something even more addictive: Senet. Senet was an ancient board game with squares and tokens, often considered the ancestor of backgammon and Monopoly. But here's the twist: it wasn't just for fun. Egyptians believed Senet represented the soul's journey through the afterlife, navigating trials to reach the gates of eternity. Playing while potentially being expelled from the kingdom of Osiris was definitely more intense than playing Uno with your best friend. A strange fact: some pharaohs even placed Senet boards in their tombs. They believed that if they got stuck in the next world, they'd still have something to pass the time. Next, entertainment through observation. Pharaohs didn't need to go to the movies. The entire palace was a living gallery. Walls were carved with art, ceilings painted with stars, and palace gardens were masterpieces of tranquil beauty: lotus ponds, multicolored fish, elegant flamingos, slaves fanning with giant palm leaves. Some writings even mentioned singing trees, actually tiny bronze bells hanging on branches, chiming softly in the wind. Have you ever laid in a hammock and listened to banana leaves rustling? Kind of like that, except instead of getting bitten by mosquitoes, you had a handmaiden waving them away with an ivory fan carved in the image of Isis. And then came the pastimes only a pharaoh could have. Watching slave wrestling matches, listening to temple priests tell ancient stories, testing new essential oils from Nubia, meditating under the stars to communicate with Ra. Mel. Sounds mystical. Historians still debate how much mythology surrounds these records. Some say they were purely ceremonial. Others believe pharaohs truly thought they could converse with the stars. That said, you lying there with a warm cup of tea and a slow story might already feel like you're communing with the cosmos. Right? To end the day, after hearing music, playing Senet, admiring gardens, and being anointed one last time, the pharaoh would quietly sit in a scented room, read ancient star charts, or simply listen to his wife whisper her dreams to see if they held omens for the nation. For them, entertainment wasn't about escaping reality. It was about merging with another one where they were both human and divine. Most of us go to bed thinking, "Hope I don't oversleep tomorrow." But for a pharaoh, sleep was a sacred rite, a time when the soul stepped out of the body, journeyed through the invisible realm, listened to the gods' voices, and sometimes returned with a prophecy for the entire kingdom. The pharaoh's bedroom wasn't just a bed, it was a miniature temple, where every item carried magical symbols. The bed, made of cedar wood, had a headboard carved with Horus's wings to protect the soul on its flight. The pillow wasn't soft, it was stone or curved wood, angled precisely to keep divine energy flowing. Doesn't sound comfy? Maybe. But let's be honest, has any hotel pillow ever helped you meet Thoth in a dream? Before sleeping, the pharaoh would be anointed with white lotus oil, the flower of rebirth and peace. That scent, blended with incense and the harp's breeze-like whispers, was the ancient version of deep sleep soundtracks at 432 hertz. Then came the sacred ritual, dream direction. Yes, the ancient Egyptians believed you could steer dreams by placing amulets, tiny carvings, or written prayers under your headrest. Like a letter to the universe from 2000 BCE, the pharaoh would whisper to the priests, "Summon Thoth. I seek answers to the eclipse last week." Or, if Ra is angry, "Let me see his light in sleep." Sounds too mystical? But think, have you ever had a dream that felt like a deep message? One that left you feeling warned or awakened the next morning? The ancient Egyptians believed every dream held meaning, especially for Pharaoh, the divine representative on earth. And if that night, the pharaoh dreamed of snakes circling the throne, or the moon vanishing from the sky, then by sunrise, the whole kingdom would prepare for a national cleansing ritual. Some dreams were carefully recorded in the Royal Dream Codex, with priests decoding each symbol. Dreaming of hair falling out? Possibly an omen of flood damage. Dreaming of walking through a stone door? A sign of coming regime change. Dreaming of holding a cat? Cute, but also a warning to beware a deceitful courtier pretending to be a friend. A strange fact: some pharaohs, like Thutmose IV, believed that a dream helped them become king. There's a stone stele describing how he dreamt of the Sphinx, who appeared and said, "If you clear the sand around me, I will grant you the throne." He did exactly that and indeed became pharaoh afterward. Kind of like dreaming you'll get a raise, then waking up and showing up to work early the next day. Modern historians still argue about whether dreams in ancient Egyptian culture were allegorical or genuinely believed to be prophetic. Some suggest it was just royal propaganda. Others argue that Egyptian civilization held a deep trust in the unseen world, and that sleep was the only bridge between the divine and the mortal. Whatever the debate, you're still here under a thin blanket, bathed in soft yellow light, maybe also sending a letter to the universe, hoping tomorrow brings less worry. So did pharaohs. The only difference, they had 7 people guarding their sleep, 3 priests recording every breath, and an entire nation waiting for them to wake with a prophecy. Before you imagine anything steamy, hold on, because intimacy in the Egyptian royal court wasn't like a soap opera, nor was it just about desire. Every touch, every act of lovemaking could be political, religious, magical, even dynastic. You're lying on a soft bed, hearing the fan spin in steady rhythm. Now imagine this: a pharaoh's bed carved from ebony or cedar wood, its legs shaped like lion heads, snake fangs, or falcon claws, symbols of strength, authority, and primel force. And here's the first surprise: royal Egyptian beds were low and small, not to save wood, but because sleeping too high was seen as distancing oneself from Mother Earth. The goddess Geb, being close to the ground, allowed life energy to circulate. And what about privacy? In the palace, the queen was the only one titled the Great Royal Wife. But don't assume that meant exclusivity. Pharaohs could have dozens of concubines. They lived in a separate area called the harem, not a place of indulgence, but a closed political system. There, the women weren't just those who shared the bed, but walking diplomatic treaties. Did you know? Every marriage to a foreign princess was a peace agreement, and every night of intimacy could be a declaration that this alliance is strong. Which brings us to a story. Once, King Ramses II received a letter from the king of the Hittites complaining, "I gave you my daughter in marriage, yet I've received no report of the wedding night." Intense, right? Sending a bedroom status update via royal correspondence. In terms of ritual, intimacy also played a role in sacred fertility rites. The pharaoh was seen as an embodiment of Osiris, and the queen as Isis, so lovemaking wasn't just passion, it was a reenactment of cosmic creation. Sounds deeply philosophical, but yep, still lovemaking. Even more fascinating, Egyptians cared greatly about sexual health and bedroom feng shui. They used essential oils, protective amulets, and magic phrases carved under the bed frame to ensure the performance went smoothly. Some ancient medical texts even gave herbal recipes to boost desire, kind of like today's performance-enhancing ads. But with pomegranate peels and frankincense resin. Another odd find, a small figurine depicting divine lovemaking placed under the pillow, not as arousal, but to align one's reproductive energy with the gods. As usual, historians still argue about the true role of the Egyptian harem. Some scholars say it was vibrant, where women learned, wrote poetry, composed music. Others believe it was a gilded cage, where politics and desire blurred dangerously. And you? You're lying alone in your nightlit room, maybe hugging a body pillow, and sometimes you wonder, can real love exist among crowns? Rituals and silent schemes? Perhaps love did exist. But for a pharaoh, it always came with duty, power, and enormous expectations around heirs. Today, if you attend a wedding or a party, it usually means picking a dress, booking a makeup slot, and arriving late. Ancient Egyptians were no different, except it took about 6 hours to perfect a cat eye and over 30 minutes to layer scented oils onto the body. And if you think pharaohs dined in solemn silence, delicately eating without speaking, then, sorry, you're mistaken. A royal Egyptian feast was where power, beauty, music, wine, and ambition blended like the Nile in flood season. Banquets usually marked occasions like asterisk, birthdays of deities, Pharaoh's coronation, asterisk, military victories, asterisk, or simply, the weather's nice. Let's celebrate, but don't imagine a quiet room with a few white-robed officials. No, these were vast courtyards, draped in silk rugs, with carved stone pillars etched with Horus, ostrich eggshell lanterns dyed in vibrant colors, and platters of gold, alabaster jars, and gemstone goblets. The menu? Oh, essential, roasted duck, goose, or beef seasoned in herbs, a bit like modern BBQ, but fire roasted with date syrup, asterisk barley bread, crisp on the outside, soft inside, served with honey or goat cheese, asterisk steamed, Nile fish with dill and black cumin, asterisk, desserts of dried dates, candied figs, or fresh grapes dipped in light wine. And if you're shocked when someone downs 3 glasses of wine at a modern party, know this: pharaohs drank wine like people drink sugarcane juice today. Their wine came from grapes, dates, or pomegranates. The most unique varieties were infused with fragrant tree resin, believed to open chakras and connect with the gods, or at least make you laugh a lot. What about the dances? There were bald-headed dancers, their bodies flowing like smoke, wearing small drums, bangles, and pearl cords tied at the waist. They didn't just dance, they told stories with movement. One dance might depict Isis searching for Osiris. Another, how to harvest grain properly. Their art was both entertainment and sacred symbolism. often paired with live music from harps, reed flutes, and stone percussion. The pharaoh sat at the center, under a canopy throne, flanked by the queen and high officials. But do you know what's interesting? Pharaohs rarely ate much. Most of the food was for the guests. The pharaoh only sampled a little, but was always served first. Egyptians believed a king doesn't need fullness. A king needs to be seen receiving offerings. So sometimes, the present beau stepped back. Ritual lasted longer than chewing a bite of fish. Strange fact, some feasts lasted 3 full days. Not because the food was that irresistible, but due to extended deity offerings, ritual transitions, and the infamous Day of Wine, when people drank until vomiting was seen as a sign of divine blessing. Sounds excessive, but remember, no Netflix. Feasts were the main form of entertainment. Historians still debate whether palace banquets were public. Some carvings show commoners attending outer gate feasts, while others argue royal banquets were strictly elite. And interestingly, both theories have evidence. So if you were invited to a pharaoh's party, what would you bring? A bronze bracelet as a gift? A song you composed yourself? Or simply the mindset to forget time entirely? Are you still awake? Because after the feast comes the consequences. From rebellion plots whispered after the final cup of wine, to a prophecy murmured into Pharaoh's ear as the party fades. When the feast ends, the real game begins. You think a banquet is just a banquet? Oh no. In ancient Egypt, every royal feast was a political chessboard. Who sat closest to the pharaoh? That was who had his trust. Who sat at the far end? They were already on the blacklist, just not informed yet. And here's the extraordinary part. After the music faded and the commoners dispersed, the inner court entered a secret ritual known as the Dream Decoding Night. Oh, the pharaoh would be led to a secluded chamber, a dark room, with flickering oil lamps and the sweet scent of incense. There, the dream priest, trained in interpreting visions or inducing dreams through sound, aroma, and sacred chants, awaited. You're lying in bed now, aren't you? Now imagine this. A gentle male voice reciting mythological verses beside Pharaoh's ear. A priestess drawing the eye of Horus on his forehead with lotus oil. And in that quiet room, the sleep of a living god was prepared like a sacred rite. A pharaoh's dreams weren't for escapism, they were for receiving divine instruction. The Egyptians believed that during sleep, the soul could leave the body and enter Duat, the realm of spirits, gods, and prophecy. Strange fact, on certain nights, the pharaoh was forbidden from sleeping in bed. Instead, he lay on the cold stone floor, his head resting on a hollow golden pillow. A white cloth draped over his forehead, all to create an open gate for the soul to exit. Some ancient texts describe that if a pharaoh didn't dream for 3 consecutive nights, it was seen as a sign that the gods were angry. And then, the entire palace would go into crisis. But if a dream did come, then what? The next morning, priests would gather around the pharaoh and interpret every detail. Asterisk. If he dreamed of rising water, it could mean a flood was coming, or a rebellion. Asterisk. If he saw a snake bite him, a warning of betrayal in the royal harem. Asterisk. If he flew over the Nile, a sign that the god Ra had visited him. Sounds far-fetched, but to the Egyptians, dreams were sacred communication. There was no dreaming of your crush and texting your bestie. Dua. Here, a misinterpreted dream could mean real death. Historians still argue, were these dreams real or orchestrated by priests to manipulate pharaohs? Some inscriptions suggest that priests controlled who was allowed into the sleeping chamber, meaning they could program dreams through scent, sound, and even mild sedatives extracted from poppy plants. Just imagine, if you were the high priest and wanted Pharaoh to invade a land, All you had to do was make him dream of the god of war. And the next morning, he would rise and proclaim, "I have received a divine command to conquer. I'm clever." Isn't it? Dream sowing was an art form. And so, dear friend, that's how the sleep of a pharaoh was never private, but a quiet negotiation between the realm of mortals and the gods. You're dozing off now, aren't you? Maybe you're about to dream, but don't worry. No priest will analyze yours. And if you're still awake, let's step into the next chapter, the morning after, when the sun god Ra rises, and the pharaoh must once again perform as a living god before all of Egypt. Being divine isn't easy. Would you like to continue? I'll wait like the Nile itself. Ever still, always ready to carry you deeper into these ancient dreams. While you're still lounging in bed or fighting the urge to open TikTok on the banks of the Nile, a solemn awakening has already begun. The pharaoh didn't yawn and throw on some clothes like we do. No, he was awakened like a god. According to ritual, as the first light streamed through the slit in the stone walls, a special set of attendants entered his chamber, carrying scented water, silk cloths, and a memorized greeting. May the god Ra illuminate your mind. Today, you shall rule in righteousness. And you? Maybe you woke up with a cat on your face, or your alarm blaring like a fire drill. The pharaoh's waking ritual unfolded like a sacred ceremony. Asterisk, lotus and mint oils were applied to the forehead, shoulders, and wrists to open the divine chakras, or more precisely, to align with the spirit of Horus. Asterisk incense from Ethiopia was burned to dispel night demons and purify the mind. Asterisk. His face was washed with water drawn from the Nile just before sunrise, considered the primordial source of the cosmos. And the mirror? The pharaoh didn't use it to check bedhead or crooked brows, but to inspect whether divine light reflected evenly from his eyes. If the glow was unbalanced, watch out. It could be a day of bad omens. After this spiritual grooming, the pharaoh entered the dressing ritual. Not alone. Of course, an entire team known as the Servants of Sacred Robes assisted. Each piece of hand-woven linen, scented, neatly folded, was layered in order, from left to right, bottom to top, light to dark. Some days, he wore golden armor to project dominance. Other days, a soft robe symbolizing the gentle god. It depended on the day of the week, or rather, the divine calendar. Your Monday? Pharaoh's was the day of Thoth, god of knowledge and the moon. Strange fact, before leaving his room, the pharaoh had to look at a small stone tablet inscribed with an oath. Today, I do not live for myself. I live for the gods. For order. For the people. And if the day was special, he would drink a small cup of Nile fish blood mixed with pomegranate wine. Sounds toxic? They believed it was the elixir of Osiris to grant the king long life and wise rulership. Modern scientists found it full of parasites, but let's not tell the pharaoh might ruin the vibe. Historians still debate. Did pharaohs truly believe they were gods? Or did they play the role to maintain control? Some records describe the existential crises of a few Egyptian kings. They wrote letters to the gods asking, "Why do I no longer dream of you?" Or, "Why do the village children look at me with fear?" Not reverence, perhaps. Behind those eyes of absolute power was a human lonely, pressured, and sleepy. And if you're still awake at this point, I suspect you're smiling, because it turns out whether you're a pharaoh or just someone listening to a bedtime story, mornings are filled with ritual, laziness, and lingering questions. You think being pharaoh is luxurious, with thrones, handmaidens, and platters of food? You're mistaken, because a pharaoh was never allowed to be just a person, not even for a minute. Even sneezing had to be done with divine dignity. In the early morning, after completing the elaborate waking ritual we spoke of earlier, the pharaoh would be taken to the audience chamber, also called the Hall of Ma'at. The space of cosmic order. Sounds heavy, right? There, he would, meet with high officials, hear financial reports, like 1/3 of Giza's grain store was eaten by rats, rule on civilian complaints, like, my neighbor stole my donkey, he sat on a golden throne, wore the crown, held the scepter, but occasionally glanced at his barley beer getting cold nearby. One unique rule: the pharaoh was not allowed to speak informally. Meaning what? He could only speak in ritual language pre-written or memorized, like attending a work meeting, but only allowed to speak in ancient verse. Instead of saying, "Bring me the map," the pharaoh would say, "O guardian of hidden paths, present the beast-hide scroll bearing the journey carved by the hand of Amun." Good thing they didn't have PowerPoint back then. Imagine delivering 72 slides, all in hieroglyphs. By midday, when the sun was at its most intense, civil disputes were brought before the pharaoh. Sounds unusual, but this was actually his favorite part of the day because, it was a chance to display justice like the god Ra, and more importantly, it helped avoid more meetings if trials ran long. Remember the word Ma'at? It was the supreme principle in ancient Egyptian society order. Justice and balance. So if someone brought a boundary dispute over farmland, the pharaoh didn't just look at evidence. He had to ponder, if I rule this way, will nature revolt? Will the river stop flowing? While you and I would just check Google Maps and a land deed. Strange fact, some cases were decided by drawing ibis feathers. They'd place 2 feathers on a table, recite the names of plaintiff and defendant, and whichever feather floated off first, that side won. Historians still debate, did priests help their side by blowing ever so gently? In the afternoon, it was time to receive foreign emissaries. They brought tribute, ivory, gemstones, giraffes, and sometimes a princess under the title Peace Bride, diplomatic letters written in cuneiform, needing both a translator and a fortune teller, compliments that went on for pages, like, from the sun-drenched east, I come to bow before the second sun, he whose shadow alone can make rivers run backward. Pharaoh would listen, nodding, occasionally turning to whisper to the vizier, tell them to send more sandalwood. As for the princess, we'll decide later. But the most stressful part of the day came when word arrived of new tensions at the southern border. The pharaoh immediately summoned generals, priests, and astrologers, yes, even astrologers, because they believed victory depends on the position of the stars. When war orders were issued, the pharaoh would dip his hand into red ink and sign a stone tablet with his index finger symbolizing divine blood deciding the fate of the nation. And then a sigh of relief. Finally, time to rest. Historians still debate. Did pharaohs truly manage every detail of the kingdom? Or was it all ceremonial? Some argue power lay with viziers and priests. Others believe pharaohs died young because they had too much to do. Can't blame them, being seen as a living god but having to settle a case about my neighbor's cow ate my grain would wear anyone down. And as the sun sets, the royal day ends. No parties, no Netflix, just a lotus bath, light meditation, and preparation for another dream ritual. You see, buying Pharaoh might seem glorious, but really, it's just working for 100 million citizens and a pantheon of demanding gods. Now imagine this. You are the Pharaoh. After days of trials, emissarius, and resolving love scandals between priests' sons and servants' daughters. You decide to step outside, to breathe in the way only a god might, and not just anyone was allowed to hunt. In ancient Egypt, only the pharaoh or those granted permission by him had the right to draw a bow or throw a spear at certain creatures. Why? Because to them, hunting was a ritual, and the hunted animal wasn't just prey. And it was the embodiment of chaos, the rebellion of nature, the enemy of Ma'at, divine order itself. So how did a royal hunt begin? Early morning. Before dawn, the pharaoh would step out of camp, dressed in a leopard skin cloak, not for warmth, but to embody the god Seker, the deity of combat in darkness. On his head, no crown, but a special hunting helmet adorned with a coiled serpent symbolizing agility, wisdom, and the ability to strike at any moment. The royal entourage included spears bearers, not allowed to throw unless commanded, a priest, to recite protective spells before each strike, a court artist, to record the heroic scene for future relief carvings, and a poet, to compose praises whenever the king brought down a beast. Sounds extra, but imagine this. You just speared a lion, and someone shouts, "By the gods!" That throw was like the sun-piercing morning mist. One especially prized quarry, the hippopotamus. Yes, the pudgy, seemingly slow hippo, but in Egyptian belief, it was the embodiment of the chaos god, Set, the eternal enemy of order. The pharaoh hunted hippos not for meat, but to declare, "I have subdued chaos. The world remains under my command." And imagine if he missed the shot. Would anyone dare admit it? Strange fact, a famous relief depicts a pharaoh hunting wild bulls, but look closely. The bull's legs are tied. What does that mean? Historien débat. Was the hunt actually a staged performance? Did the pharaoh shoot at pre-captured animals to affirm strength before his people? Some even suggest that perhaps the court poets and artists spiced things up in the record, like the pharaoh sliced off the lion's head with a single swing, when in truth, the lion had been sedated by a dart earlier. And now, about that leopard skin cloak. You thought it was just fashion? Not at all. In Egyptian spirituality, leopard skin was a bridge between the human world and the spirit realm. The leopard cloak worn by the pharaoh during hunts was a shield against evil spirits, a symbol of speed and power, and, most intriguingly, a veil to conceal weakness, because there were times during the hunt when his hands trembled. There were days the arrows missed, and that leopard skin like a mask helped him maintain the image of invincibility. After the hunt, there was a ritual. The pharaoh washed his hands in perfumed water. Incense was lit. The animal's head was placed on a stone altar. He declared, "Horus has triumphed. Set has been subdued. Peace returns to the land." Then, the priest would anoint the pharaoh's forehead with the beast's blood, a sacred oiling of victory. You return from a picnic and take off your shoes. A pharaoh returns from hunting and gets deified. And if you're still awake by now, you might be smiling. Because you understand, behind every arrow was a message. Behind every leopard skin, a carefully hidden fear. Even a king, who claimed to be a god, at times, just wanted to throw a spear into the wind and feel he still had control over something in his life. It all begins with one final breath. The moment the pharaoh stops breathing, the entire palace falls into silence. No one may weep loudly. No one may scream. Only the priests begin whispering the first spells, known as the awakening of the soul. Because the Egyptians believed the soulby could panic when leaving the body and needed to be soothed. Like a child lost in a crowded market, The pharaoh's body is then rushed to the house of preparation per Nefer. Located beside the Nile, this was no place of mourning. It was more like an elite spa for the dead. There, the mummification artists, known as embalmers, began their sacred work. No surgical masks, no sterile scalpels, but they had ritual copper blades, boiling fragrant resin from desert trees, and profound reverence. Have you heard about removing the brain through the nose with a metal hook? Yes, it's true. A small hook was inserted into the nostril. The brain stirred like scrambled eggs, and then extracted bit by bit. Sounds gruesome, but they believed removing the brain equals removing chaos, so the soul could fly freely, unburdened by earthly thoughts. Then came the liver, stomach, lungs, intestines, all carefully removed, rinsed with palm wine and natron salt, and placed into 4 canopic jars. Each jar was guarded by a god with an animal head. Asterisk liver, human-headed god. Asterisk lungs, baboon-headed god. Asterisk intestines, jackal-headed god. Asterisk stomach, falcon-headed god. Sounds like an ancient Egyptian superhero team. The pharaoh's body was then soaked in natron salt for 40 days. Not to the other eyes, but to stop time, to freeze flesh, skin, and bone between 2 worlds. After drying, the body was anointed with fragrant oils, coated in tree resin, and wrapped in over 20 layers of linen. Between each layer were gems, amulets, and little notes that read things like, "Please do not let demons open this layer." Oh, and you thought we were the only ones who used Post-its when packing. At this point, you'd think it was over? Not yet. The pharaoh couldn't be buried until he was awakened. The opening of the mouth ceremony was the most sacred rite of all. A priest used a small golden blade to touch the lips, nose, eyes, and ears of the mummy to restore the senses, so the soul may hear, speak, smell, see, and pass through the final gate. Oh, the official funeral lasted 70 days. There was a procession, singing, storytelling, and professional mourners. Some would scratch their faces, tear their clothes, roll on the ground, not always from grief, but because the more emotion shown, the more beloved the king appeared. Historians still argue what percentage of those tears were real. And finally, the pharaoh's body was placed in the tomb. Not just a grave, but a gateway to the next world, inside where dry provisions, bread, honey, wheat, personal items, combs, water jars, mirrors, scrolls, instructions for navigating the underworld, and hundreds of Shabtai figurines, little servants made of stone, bearing this command: if the king is summoned to labor in the afterlife, you shall work in his place. In other words, the pharaoh brought a full staff, so he wouldn't have to lift a finger beyond the grave. Then, the tomb door was sealed. A massive stone rolled into place. No candles, no air, only silence. Silence and the promise that one day, if the soul passed its trials, the pharaoh would be reborn as a star. Ancient curses and modern mummy chasing, where history, myth, and a few suspicious accidents intertwine to the point where you wonder, did someone really not want to be awakened? Let's rewind to 1922. You've heard the name Howard Carter, a British archaeologist who opened one of the most famous tombs in history, the tomb of Tutankhamun, the young pharaoh who died before reaching 20. When Carter first poked a light through a sealed wall after thousands of years, He whispered, "I see wonderful things." And he was right, gold. Jewels, statues, chariots, lion beds, and the untouched mummy of the boy king dubbed Child of the Gods. What he didn't see was the wave of mysterious deaths that followed. Just months after the discovery, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's sponsor, was bitten by a mosquito, got an infection, and died. At the exact moment he passed, all the lights in Cairo went out. His dog, back in England, howled, then dropped dead. The global press went wild. Headlines read, "Pharaoh strikes back." Grave robber dies mysteriously. Curse awakens with the gold. Sounds like a ghost story, but it convinced millions. The pharaohs do not rest and they do not forgive intrusions. Now you're wondering, where's that curse written? Is it even real? There's a line supposedly carved at the tomb's entrance. Written in hieroglyphs, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the eternal rest of the king." Oh, a gentle little warning, isn't it? Like a fridge note, "Don't touch my cake." Except the cake is a sacred king from 3,000 years ago. And what about the historians? Oh, they've split into two camps. The rationalists, they say it's all coincidence, psychological stress, ancient mold in tombs causing respiratory illness, and the power of suggestion leading to death. The romantics, or the superstitious, they believe a genuine divine consciousness guards the mummies, refusing to let the past be unearthed and displayed like decor in a showroom. Some even joke, try sleeping for 3,000 years. Then tell me how you feel when someone cracks open your coffin. Whether you believe it or not, one thing's undeniable. The mummy hunting frenzy of the 19th and 20th centuries unfolded like a fever dream. Did you know? There was a time when wealthy Brits hosted mummy unwrapping parties. Then, they bought mummies from the black market, laid them on banquet tables, turned on golden lamplight, poured wine, and peeled off the linen layers in front of guests. Sounds like a death-themed spa experience. Some even ground mummy bones into powder for medicine, believing it cured stomach aches, insomnia, and bad luck. So if you can't sleep, why not try a few capsules of crushed Tutankhamun? But what was the result? Thousands of tombs desecrated, hundreds of mummies lost their names, their identities, stories, and legacies vanished like sand through fingers. And then the whispers began. Egypt is avenging itself through curses. Touch their ancestors, and their ancestors will touch you back. Today, museums have begun returning mummies and artifacts to Egypt, not just out of ethics, but from an unspoken fear that something feels off. That history shouldn't be stripped bare and displayed like samples, that some things are better left to sleep. Still awake? If you're still lying there, listening, let me whisper one last thing. It's not the curse we fear most. It's that we've forgotten how to honor what is sacred. So tonight, before you drift off, if you happen to scroll past the gaze of a stone Egyptian statue, offer a quiet bow. And who knows, someone on the other side just might nod back.